for 11, the class before this, we talked about the French Revolution essay, where you are going to be looking at the French Revolution, but also at the Arab Spring, specifically in Egypt. We talked about 5 different themes that you can look at. There are economic desperation, inspiring moments and messengers, popular revolts, shifts in power, and religious repercussions. So start thinking about this. This essay is due just before Thanksgiving, so start putting down some ideas on that now about how the French Revolution is similar to what has been happening in Egypt. Remember, you have all sorts of articles already researched, already put into a PDF for you. We also had watched a video on Napoleon, and just to go over some of those topics that we covered in that video, Napoleon is not actually French. Napoleon Bonaparte is actually born Napoleone Buonaparte on the island of Corsica, which considered itself Italian. The Corsican people consider themselves culturally Italian. So Napoleon, for a very long time, dislikes France because Corsica was taken over by France right around the time when he was born. He eventually has to get over that when he moves to France with his father so that he can attend military school. This is important because there's a lot of things that are sort of crafted for Napoleon's personality when he is at school. First off, he is an outsider. He has a weird accent. He's different than the other boys. He's from a different place. And in this way, he is isolated and he's a bit of a loner and a loser. And he sort of always feels the need to repair that reputation as he gets older. And he has the chance to do that in the army. The French army has a lot of successes. He gains more and more recognition for his successes. And one of those major successes is in Paris. If you'll remember, the Directory was the government at this time. Remember, we have the legislative group. They've been elected by the citizens, and then that National Assembly, or that convention, selected then 5 guys, the directors, who were extremely corrupt, kept the country at war. And the citizens of France were sort of fed up with it. And there was a mob that actually started protesting that, hey, we want a king back. They preferred monarchy to these 5 corrupt directors. Napoleon happened to be in Paris at the time, and the Directory orders him and the army to put down this mob. Napoleon opens up cannon fire on these civilians, which is pretty significant. That's very rare that you unleash your full artillery onto civilians. Might be a little bit harsh, but the director realizes that Napoleon is a man that can be counted on to follow directions. So he is rewarded with more responsibilities. He goes to what we would see as northern Italy, the northern part of the Boot, to fight the Austrians. He is successful there, and he is given more responsibility after that. His next posting is in Egypt. The French, it seems a very odd place for the French to go in the late 1700s, but the French were fighting the British over trade routes. To get to Asia, you would have to sail all the way around the Horn of Africa. This takes a long time. The seas can be very rough. So many people wanted to travel overland, sort of cutting across the Middle East to get to India and then eventually on to China. So the British and the French are fighting over that. They're fighting over the expanses of their empires. While Napoleon is there, he is again the British fighting the French. He fights the Great British Lord Admiral Horatio Nelson, who was one of the best military heroes that the British have. Nelson whoops Napoleon in battle. That's sort of a big blow to Napoleon's ego. But fortunately, the news of this major defeat never gets back to France because Napoleon sort of controls the press. He is an early master at public relations. Instead of reporting about his defeat, Napoleon makes sure that reports of all the good things that he does gets back to France. Reports of how well the French soldiers are doing, of the leper colony that Napoleon visits. So he is bending the truth ever so slightly so that it benefits him personally. So he comes back from Egypt, and Napoleon is becoming a well-known figure. The people like him, while at the same time they are disliking the Directory. The Directory's been in charge for 5 years now, 6 years. They're corrupt. They still are taxing the people too much. The people are fed up, and they look to Napoleon as an alternative. So one of the directors abandons the other four and looks to Napoleon to assist him with a coup d'etat, or an overthrow of the government, strike on the state. And with this, the people actually support this. They like Napoleon. He's been successful. He, came from humble origins. They then asked the legislature, the National Assembly of sorts, not would you like to elect Napoleon or Francois or Jacques or Pierre. That would be an effective election, to have lots of options for the people to choose from. Instead, Napoleon decides to hold a plebiscite vote, which means, yes, we're going to let the people choose, but their choice is, would you like a new government or not? And by this point, everyone wants a new government. Napoleon uses this type of vote because he knows that he will win. So this new government is created, there's a new constitution, and Napoleon is one of 3 consuls. This is a term taken from ancient Rome, similar to when Julius Caesar was with the 2 other leaders, and they are the triumvirate. They are leading together, and eventually, within a few years, Napoleon takes the term first consul. He is more equaler than the others. He is more beloved than the others. So he's getting power, and he quite enjoys it. He's done some with politics. Now he needs to go back to the military. He goes back to try and take Italian territory to fight the Austrians. These are still the wars that have been going on since 1792. To get to Italy, you do have to cross the Alps from France. So this image, painted by Jacques-Louis David, is supposed to be of Napoleon crossing the Alps to go on his way to be victorious. It is an epic picture, but there's a lot of things wrong with it. One, he does look very impressive. The horse has beautiful hair. But if you know anything about horses, you know that this horse is teeny tiny. Napoleon's legs are bent. If he even straightened his legs, he would almost be able to touch the ground. This is where this whole myth of Napoleon being short and having a Napoleon complex. He wasn't actually short. Napoleon was above average height for a man in 1800. He was 5'6". Average height was about 5'4", 5'5". But this perception of him being short comes from images like this. The horse is made smaller so that proportionally Napoleon looks larger, that he looks more powerful. It's about the image Napoleon wants you to see, not the truth. He does this so that you, as the citizen of France, you put your trust in him, not because he's short. He is, again, looking back to ancient inspiration. Bonaparte has now carved his name in the Alps just next to Hannibal, the ancient general from Carthage who crossed the Alps. He is using these references to the Roman Empire. In these battles, and he crosses the Alps and he looks so victorious, he actually wins. He wins not only battles, but he wins now territories, expanding the size of France, not just winning battles, but winning land, winning people who can pay taxes. Napoleon has had a number of successes, but then he hits a bit of a snag with the Haitian Revolution. Haiti is one of 2 countries located on the island of Saint-Dominique in the Caribbean, and it was an extremely important part of France's economy. It was a sugar colony and part of the Atlantic Triangle trade that we talked about in Unit 2. Slave economy. Slaves come from Africa, brought to the New World, where they harvest sugarcane, in this case for Haiti. Sugarcane is notoriously one of the most difficult crops to grow and harvest. To cut it down, it's very tall, very sort of a woody reed like bamboo. So to cut it down, it's actually dangerous. People would use machetes, they could lose an arm, have horrible wounds or disfigurement just from cutting it down. Then it has to be made and processed into sugar, which is a dangerous process where pretty much vats of boiling sugar. If those spill, you will also die. With the French on Saint-Dominique, is a small population of white French slave owners, plantation owners, and they are far outnumbered by the slaves. And one slave, Toussaint, had been reading all of these Enlightenment works we've talked about. He learned about the American Revolution, learned about the French Revolution, says, why can't we do that here in Haiti? We outnumber the whites. We should not live under this oppression. So they revolt. And Napoleon has to make the decision, do I let them revolt? Do I let them go free? Or do I fight for them? And he sends the French army. He takes troops away from these fights against Italy and Austria and Britain to go make sure that France holds on to power of Haiti, because this is so important for the economy. One thing that happens to the French army when they get to Haiti is that many of them get sick, especially with yellow fever. This is one of the reasons that if you ever go to Haiti or somewhere very tropical and third world, you need to get shots before you go. They didn't have those shots in the early 1800s, so a lot of the French army gets sick or dies. And so again, Napoleon is faced with this choice. Do I continue fighting for Haiti, or do I let it go? He decides it's not worth the loss of time, the investment of money, of resources, of soldiers, and decides to give up Haiti. And as a direct result, actually, he decides to sell the Louisiana Territory. Now, if you look at Louisiana, it's nowhere near Haiti. It's, hundreds of miles from Haiti. This area in green is what France owned from about the 1750s onwards, even after the 7 Years' War. This territory in Louisiana, still to this day, is heavily agricultural. Now, you could say, well, they need the Mississippi for trade, and that's important, but for the most part, Napoleon needed that land to harvest food, to feed the slaves. If he is no longer responsible for those slaves, he doesn't need the food. And he is able to sell this territory to President Thomas Jefferson, and overnight, the size of the country nearly triples in America. So now Napoleon has all of this money that he can use to go back to France and help his people. So he's going to use it. Yes, we've lost the sugar trade. Yes, they are losing out on that economic benefit. But he did get a lump sum of cash from America. One thing that Napoleon can do with this cash is to establish a public school system. These are called lycées, and they still exist today. So that's pretty long-term impact. And this is perfect because it goes along with the French Revolution's ideas of enlightenment. Think of Rousseau and the social contract and an enlightened, educated citizenry. So this is benefiting the people. Another thing that helps the people directly is the creation of a banking system. Before this, banks would have been localized, they would have been inconsistent. Now Napoleon creates the National Bank of France. It still exists today. So he must have done something right. One of my favorites, or I would think would be my favorite at the time, is what we call infrastructure. The things that a city or a government builds and maintains to help life go smoothly. Sewer systems. We take sewer systems for granted because we have never had to live with muddy, poopy streets. He builds roads and canals to foster greater trade within France, supporting new businesses. These are things that directly help the citizens of France after so many years of desperation. This isn't necessarily something that benefits the people, but they like it. The Concordat, which is a fancy type of law, Concordat of 1801, re-establishes Catholicism in France. If we go back to the 1793 and the Reign of Terror, the Committee of Public Safety wants to eliminate the Catholic Church from all of France. And this is part of getting rid of the estate system and the Ancien regime, because the Catholic Church had way too much power pre-revolution. The Concordat does not declare that the Catholic Church is the official Church of France, that it is restored back to the type of power it has before the revolution. That never comes back. What he does say is that he realizes that the Catholic faith, the Catholic Church, is central to French culture, and that most French people are believers. It is not the official religion, and religion will never again be as prominent in France again. But it is making it free and open for people to practice their religion again. Another thing he does is all of those émigrés, those nobles, bourgeoisie who left around 1790 because they wanted to keep their heads attached to their bodies. Napoleon says, hey, come on home. France is your home. You should come home. And that's partially, look at all the wonderful things that he has accomplished. It's a good place to live. We're not cutting off people's heads. But another part of it is the émigrés were very often wealthy. If they come back to France, they will be paying taxes to the government of France. While the lump sum from the Louisiana Purchase helps establish a lot of these programs, taxes are what will help maintain them. Another thing that helps the people is the opportunity to purchase land. A lot of the land that was confiscated from the church or even from nobles during the Revolution has been owned by the government. Napoleon says, let's offer that to the peasants, people who never in their wildest dreams would think they could own land. Now, he is offering that to people. Land ownership, home ownership is an important sort of milestone for many cultures. In this case, he is trying to convince these people, you know what, you might not have a lot of money, but you are important to France. Also, he's going to be able to tax them in a different way. But the people are directly benefiting from this. Another way he does this to benefit the people is he creates a new code of law, similar to Justinian or even Hammurabi. This is in 1804. It's a widespread series of laws. Again, you can see in the painting here, very realistic. This is just how Napoleon looked when he was writing these laws. Some of the major points are that jobs, especially government jobs, should be given based on who a person is and what their ability is, not what their family's last name is, not how much money they make or what estate they used to be in, but on merits. This is similar to what Peter the Great did in Russia with the table of ranks. And Napoleon in particular would like this because he wouldn't have earned his position because he didn't come from an impressive family. He wasn't wealthy, but he worked his way up from the bottom. He started at the bottom. Another thing that's important is that Napoleon re-emphasizes that laws need to be created by the representatives of the citizens, not by a single king, not by a single judge, but by the people. That this government can only work if the people are accurately represented. Now, there's a group of people that he doesn't quite want to represent as fully anymore, and that's the ladies. Because Napoleon believes that the role of women is in the kitchen and in the home, raising good French citizens. The time of the Revolution with equality, that was important. And actually, most women aren't terribly upset because look at all the wonderful things that they now have. They have the opportunity to buy their own home, to send their children to school. They have a better life because there's sewer systems. That's wonderful. And in the long run, many women don't care as much about losing voting rights. That's it for 411.